Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to start. It's a very challenging time in the CSOC process now because the last possibilities to influence the contents of the resolutions are right now. The resolutions are being negotiated in the various informal meetings as we speak, and there are some technical reasons why those resolution texts have to be agreed on today or latest tomorrow morning. So I know that we are losing some of the people who were supposed to be here. For that reason, the director of UNDESA, Daniela Baas, is going to come later, and Jens Gawanas, who is the highest UN civil servant in charge of Africa-related affairs, the Undersecretary General and Special Advisor of the Secretary General on Africa-related issues, has been flying from the African Union Summit through the night, but will be coming. And then we have Dr. Päivi Mattila-Viro from the Finnish Ministry for Social Affairs. She fell ill and couldn't travel, but she has prepared a video presentation which is on YouTube, and we are going to see her presentation on the YouTube. But can we go to my introduction slides? So I come originally from the Finnish Ministry for Foreign Affairs, but now for 4 years I've been on a leave of absence and working at the National Institute for Health and Welfare of Finland called THL. And there we have been managing a European Union social protection systems program together with the European Commission and OECD and Germany. Let's go to the next slide. These are the speakers. We can move forward. About my background and where our interest in finding the innovations to social policy, innovations to social protection comes from is that our task has been to help African and Asian governments to innovate approaches to systematize capacity development for their social protection efforts. Let's move forward. One of the very successful results of this is what we call Transform. Stanfield Michello is one of the Transform master trainers. This is an African regional leadership curriculum on social protection. We'll hear more about that. It's also available as an e-learning version on what we call socialprotection.org. Let's go on. The other important area is that we've been supporting the efforts of African universities to design social protection related master's and bachelor level curricula, and this probably is important to create sustainable capacities and national ownership for the social protection systems. Let's go to the next. Another innovation that African Union is particularly much promoting is what we call SPIRE work. It's an acronym for the words social protection for informal and rural economy workers. We are going to be hearing about that as well. And we are going to be hearing about the African Protocol on the right to social protection and social security, and the African Union Social Agenda 2063. Now Undersecretary General Jens Gawanas arrived after having flown through the night, so thank you so much. May I shake your hands?
Thank you.
Or maybe give you a hand. Thank you so much for coming. So, those who are interested in the views of African experts on social protection, I highly recommend you will be able to access these slides, and are direct internet links to about 80 videos on mainly interviews and statements by African social protection experts, as you can see there, on various innovations to social protection and social protection related capacity development. And the last slide. And now click on the first one. So just to give us a flavor of what we are talking about, there's a 3-minute video from Africa, from the regional or continental capacity development program, leadership program on social protection. This was developed at the request of African Union Commission by African experts and international experts based in Africa.
Knowledge is power, and as much as we can say, okay, yes, we want to do social protection, we want to roll out activities around social protection so that vulnerability and poverty is reduced. We cannot do it without knowledge, and that is why this transform training is so important, so critical.
What we're trying to achieve with Transform is to help institutionalize social protection in the countries. And part of institutionalization is to develop the culture of social protection and research and learning in the countries. To do that, we need to move away from training that is ad hoc and delivered by those who are providing technical assistance to a more systematic way of learning.
The way Transform is, it's about experiential kind of learning. Whereas to begin with my academic background, most of the kind of learning that we are used to is more of teacher-centered, where you are the authority and imparting knowledge onto the others.
The fact that this course has broken down these different blocks that bring together social protection as a system has been very important. The way they have set up the material, together with the practical activities for each component of the learning that we had was real perfect. It was real informing, it was real bringing enthusiasm among ourselves, and it brought a lot of points of realization that, oh, I didn't know that much, that I'm connected to this ministry, or I'm connected to these stakeholders in my work. You know, we do social protection work every day, but we fail to see those linkages, like how do we relate with other parts of the social protection system.
One of the main emphasis of the Transform is leadership and transformation process. And that hasn't been very emphasized in my background to social protection. And although I've worked in relatively good positions of leadership prior to the Transform process, I think the exposure to the content of leadership and transformation has been a huge surprise and a positive surprise, I must add.
African Union, which is the union of all African governments, they requested us if we could help develop a permanent African system for capacity development in social protection. And at the same time, the European Union, together with government of Finland and OECD and Germany, had decided that we'll try in this program to support the systematization of social protection capacity development.
It is now clear that social protection is a very good tool for poverty reduction in Africa in general. And therefore, if we train so many people in it, they have the capacity, they can lead their various country teams to develop country-specific social protection systems to address issues of poverty, vulnerability, and exclusion in various African countries.
So I welcome now Mr. Stanfield Michello to take over. Stanfield has grown with the growth of the Zambian social protection system during the past 20 years. He started, I remember when he started, he was the only civil servant talking about social protection in Zambia, and he became the director of social protection in the government of Zambia, and it was so encouraging to see in the later years where in meetings he didn't need to do any of the talking because he had already built such a good cadre of social protection professionals in the country, and I've been very much encouraged about that. Stanfield has since then become one of the champions of this Transform leadership training program on social protection in Africa. Stanfield, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. How much time am I being given?
10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay, that is fine. Well, thanks for this opportunity to share my perspective regarding social protections and also innovations to help reduce inequality and poverty on the continent. For Zambia, the thing that strikes you first are the high inequalities, whereby the Gini coefficient is one of the highest on the continent. It's above the average for the continent, and this is an indication that we need to do more as a country. And to address that, one of the things that we have done as a country is to design and implement the social cash transfer program. And this program basically started in 2003 in Kalomo. And right now, the country has been able to reach out to all the districts and is addressing vulnerability in 556,000 households. We did a randomized control trial impact evaluation, and from the findings, it was clear that the was is able to reduce headcount poverty by 5.4% and also poverty gap by 24%. School attendance, we have seen also an improvement in the number of children that are able to spend time in school. Also, we saw that the cash transfer has economic multiplier effects of 1.79, meaning when we spend 1 kwacha for the cash transfer in a community, there is an additional amount of money that is generated, those benefits that basically filter to the other members of the community. So when you look at Africa, Africa is a signatory to so many conventions, declarations, and the charters. You can name it. Is it the Dakar Charter, for instance, the African Charter of Human Rights, SDGs, MDGs, everything, I would say we have it. But the question is why aren't we implementing some of the things we have told ourselves to be implementing? Is it a question of capacity? Is it a question of the implementation gap, whereby the intentions are not being matched by what we put on the ground? And probably what could explain is the issue of capacity. And so what we have done as Zambia is to say, why don't we try to domesticate capacity building in social protection? Because historically, we would discover to say people have been exposed or trained in social protections are those staff that have had the opportunity to go abroad, to go maybe get a master's or a first degree in social protection. And this kind of training is not sustainable and it's not systematic enough. So now working with the EU and the University of Zambia, we have started to devise a social protection program that is going to offer a solid base for social protection. So this particular process was such that there was an assessment that was done by the University of Zambia by going into the industry to check what kind of cadre the industry wanted in terms of social protection. And at the time the university was doing the assessment, I was lucky that I was working for government as director. I remember telling the lecturers that were doing the assessment to say the kind of students that we're getting from the university, when it comes to social protection, they are quite raw. We discover to say they can't even define what social protection is. They can't define what a risk is at that particular time. So I was telling them to say, please, I think we really need to domesticate the training of social protection in the country. If you can't give us fully baked social protection graduates, even half-baked, I think, would be better than getting students that are raw in social protection. So this particular initiative was moved forward, and they also looked at in-house to see what kind of courses they had. And they discovered to say they had actually a lot of courses that were spread around the different departments. In economics, they were there, in demography, and when they put them together, actually, you discover to say actually they constitute social protection, but it's so that the packaging was wrong. So moving forward, a team was constituted consisting of the academicians and also practitioners, and they are now designing a master's degree in social protection and also a bachelor's degree in social policy, so that they're able to provide advanced skills in social protection. And incidentally, because I've now stopped working for the government, I've been roped into this process. So I'm one of the people again who's contributing to the design of the master's degree program and also the bachelor's degree program. So I hope I'll be able to walk the talk. So those are some of the courses. Then the second innovation is the Transform, the video that we've been watching. And the aim of Transform is to build a mass of critical thinkers at both policy level and practitioners, so that this cadre, they are able to design, manage, and implement effectively and efficiently social protection systems, whether it's at the national level, whether it's at the decentralized level, because we think to say this is one of the issues that has been leading to this implementation gap between what you intend to do and what you realize on the ground. So what makes Transform unique is that it's an initiative that was actually born out of the request made by the African Union. And it's a multi-agency collaboration involving ILO, UNICEF, and also the EU, European Union, social protection system, and also we have other partners like the Irish Aid. So when you look at the methodology that is used by Transform, we say it's an adult pedagogical methodology which is anchored on experiential learning. Basically, it's learning through discovery. So as the participants under Transform, we are given an opportunity to discover knowledge on your own. So there are a lot of exercises and activities that test your mind so that you are able to show or bring up your creativity. And once that is done, we've seen that it results in mindset shifts and also paradigm shifts, because that's what we need as a country. So we have a group of 22 master trainers that have been trained from around the continent, from different countries. Kenya, Zambia, we have, Lesotho, we have, and this is just one of the group that has been done. So in terms of the trainings, we've done trainings in countries like Zambia, Ethiopia, Kenya. We have been to Tanzania, we have been to Malawi, we have been to Sudan. We have also trained the UN Women organization. This was done in Kenya. We also had an opportunity to train the African Union policymakers in Addis Ababa. And we are also having some trainings in the next 2 weeks in Namibia and Zimbabwe. So we have seen actually a demand for this Transform trainings because of the methodology that is being used. So we have also been able to adapt this particular Transform to the e-learning version, so that those who don't have time to take part in the face-to-face can learn online. Then the other innovation that one would talk about is basically, when you look at social protection in the continent, there is always this gap. We have those people basically in the higher deciles, they are able to contribute to contribute to social protection, so they've got access to pensions. Then those on the bottom, they've got access probably to social assistance. But we have these people in the middle, those especially in the informal sector, that are deemed too poor to contribute to pensions. When they try to go to social assistance, again, they are told we are too rich to be receiving social assistance. So they are kind of hanging in the middle. So what we are saying is that that group, they need social protection so that they also benefit from what social protection is able to do in terms of dealing with vulnerability and poverty. And the groups, of course, that are vulnerable when it comes to lacking access to social protection, we're talking about domestic workers, construction workers, and small-scale farmers. And 98% of workers in Zambia are in agriculture, forestry, and fisheries are in basically the informal economy workers. So to wind up on Spirework, what Spirework has done, I should mention that it's still its infancy. So the design basically has been done, but it has to be approved by the overall steering committee. So according to the design, we want the people in the informal sector to be able to contribute some money towards basically this pension kind of system through the National Pension Scheme Authority. And of course, we do realize to say informal workers, they don't have an income that is stable. We know that they are farmers, sometimes the income is seasonal. So we've taken all those things into account. So there will be long-term benefits for the people for old age. When you become old, you should be able to draw back on those benefits. We're also talking about benefits for emergencies, for disability, for injuries. We're also talking about benefits for survivorship. When a parent dies, what happens to the children? And then we also have short-term benefits like for funerals and also pregnancies. So in conclusion, I'm saying that systematic capacity building is key in addressing some of the social protection implementation gaps so that we are able to move as a continent from rhetoric to actually doing what needs to be done. And we need to pay a lot of attention to capacity building so that we're able to move away from the ad hoc kind of capacity building that we've been doing to systematizing capacity building and also ensuring that it's domesticated, because actually it's more cheaper if you domesticate social protection, because one would ask to say, does it make sense for the EU or for any organization, cooperating partner to continue training only a few people instead of putting money and ensuring that we have got domestic trainings? Thank you.
Fantastic. So many thanks, Stanfield, for a very informative, very interesting presentation and keeping time. The plan is that we will now hear the video presentation by Dr. Päivi Mattila-Viro, and then we are interested in hearing kind of the first reflections on these innovations in Africa and innovations in Europe from Undersecretary General Bienska-Wanas, and to hear her views and visions. And after that, there will be a possibility to ask questions and give comments. We are also going to get Daniela Bas to say a few words at the end. But let's listen now to the 7 minutes of Päivi Mattila-Viro. Is a development economist by training and turned into a social policy expert in the Finnish Ministry of Social Affairs. She's especially responsible for a strategic kind of priority project on improving the labor market situation of persons with disabilities in Finland.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I want to thank the organizers of this session for this great opportunity to present some of the Finnish innovations related to inequality reduction. I start my presentation by introducing a project launched by Finnish government in 2015 called Career Opportunities for Persons with Disabilities. The project aimed to change the labor market situation of persons with disability so that they could remain at employment where they are or find employment on the open labour market. This would give more equal opportunities, and it would also reduce prejudice against disability. As a background of this project, it has been estimated that 1.9 million Finns of working age have some type of a disability or chronic disease. Of these, 600,000 individuals think that the disability or chronic disease they have affects their work and work opportunities. These are actually really big numbers because Finland is a very small country, and actually these numbers are increasing all the time. It has also been estimated that in the European Union area there will be 120 million persons with disabilities in year 2020. So this objective of trying to improve the labour market situation of persons with disabilities is shared all around the European Union. When our project started, we were in a situation where too often disability or chronic disease prevented people from entering or re-entering working life. Finnish service system is really complicated. We have a lot of means, various benefits and tools to help persons with disabilities. This is not a problem. The problem is that the system just has not operated well, and people are dropping out of the system and people don't get the help they need. In this key project, we aim to fix this. We believe that the right time tailored solutions will help people to continue at work or find employment. The very basic idea we follow here is that everybody has a right to work. In this project, we targeted both groups, those outside labour market and those at work. The key project paid attention to 5 main aspects: the demand and supply side of the labour market, the know-how of professionals who are working with persons with disabilities, operation of the service system, cut of the intensive trap in working life, and finally, change of the attitudes towards persons with disabilities in working life. During the key project, we have done a lot of work with workplaces, with employers, with different ministries, and with third sector parties, and with persons with disabilities. So we have basically covered the whole country and all the organizations that have a word to say in the employment of persons with disabilities. We have also carried out research, for example, on employers' attitudes and about persons with disabilities as entrepreneurs. Very important part of this work has been building a strong cooperation and connection with labour market parties. These parties have signed a resolution where they agree on certain practical steps that they take in order to improve the labour market situation of persons with disabilities. This resolution is actually one of its kind. It's never done before in Finland. One of our biggest efforts has been the training of workability coordinators. With the help of a coordinator, a person with disabilities get the support and help they need and have access to continuous service system. We have succeeded in training 700 workability coordinators altogether, all around the country, and their work has proven to be effective and efficient. We actually made a study on this. We have also used the method of field experiment. We had 12 experiments around the country, and with these experiments, we built flexible paths to treatment and rehabilitation and early support, and tried to cut the time spent away from work. One of our field experiments targeted students with disabilities. It is particularly important to find what the obstacles are for young people with disabilities to enter the labour market right after their studies and remove these obstacles. We have also built a web-based platform that includes all the services, benefits and legislation related to persons with disabilities and employment possibilities for them. This platform is unique and it is operating very well. It has 11,000 users every month, which is a huge number in Finnish scale. The results of the key project shows that employment situation of persons with disabilities has improved considerably in Finland during this time. In this picture, you can see the decline in the amount of unemployed persons with disabilities. We have actually had 35 continuous months when this unemployment has declined compared to earlier year, and this is a great result. In numbers, we have 12,000 unemployed persons with disabilities less than when the key project started. This means 100 million euro savings from the cost of unemployment alone on a yearly basis. The attitudes of employers have altered. They now do not emphasize as much as earlier the disability of a person, but more the attitudes and the know-how and motivation a person has. This is actually a big change, and it has happened during 10 years. The labour market parties now work together with third sector organizations, which is a great change. So altogether, the key project shows that there is a lot we can do to improve the situation of persons with disabilities in the labour market and create more equal opportunities for them. We also have other efforts in Finland to reduce inequality and increase inclusion. We have new practices and means to reduce persistent segregation. We have a project on basic social security and activeness. We also have a basic income experiment and working groups on silver economy and economy of well-being. Finnish participants there in New York can tell you more about these efforts. Thank you so much for your attention, and I wish you a great meeting.
So thank you very much, Päivi. She also respected the time well. Now it will be very, very interesting to hear the thoughts and a presentation by Undersecretary General Jens Kauanas, what you were planning to tell us, and also some of your maybe reactions to what you have heard this far from Finland as well as from Africa. We have worked together for a long time. Jens Kauanas used to be the Commissioner of Social Affairs and Labour in the African Union Commission for 10 years or something like that. And when she retired, when she moved back to her home country, Namibia, we were very fortunate. She was actually our main counterpart in this EU Social Protection Systems program, but not for very long, because the Secretary General of the UN needed her here and invited her to support the UN work in Africa. So, Undersecretary General, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Timo, and thank you all for being here. I have a prepared statement, but I think I will try and speak more to the issues so that we can generate more of a discussion than for me to read a statement to you. I want to thank the core organizers of this event, both the government of Finland and UNDESA, for affording us the opportunity to share something that is very, very close to my heart, and that is the issue of social protection. I do believe that this collaboration that we have is an embodiment of the universality of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. It does not matter that you are an African or European. The fact of the matter is that we share common challenges, including the realization of the promise not to leave anyone behind. But I want to address this topic for three main reasons. The one is that it is of no doubt a significant importance for the promotion of inclusive growth, sustainable development, social cohesion, and strengthening of the resilience of our people and societies. Social protection policies, and may I add, social policies, are not there to fill market failures. They are right to dignity of every human being. And I want to repeat, we don't have social policies or social protection just as a stopgap measure for market failures. It's a policy and a protection on its own. And so when I cast my mind back and I think of the days that I arrived at the African Union, and we organized the first extraordinary summit on employment, employment alleviation and poverty eradication and employment creation. I think it's maybe one of the first times that we made sure that social protection got its deserved place within the declarations and plans of action of the African Union. But more importantly, and my colleague is coming from Zambia, and I want people always to remember this, that we had the Livingston Call of Action, and that we developed together with Help Age International at that time, focusing on the elderly and the right of social protection of the elderly. And that Livingston Call of Action on social protection became actually the driver for social protection on the continent. And I think it is important that I go back as far as that in order to put us in the picture. The African Union also developed the social policy framework. And the reason for developing a social policy framework was because of the issue of fragmentation of social policies. You have health policies that don't speak to education policies, that don't speak to the market policies, etc. And we thought it was important to have something like a framework that speaks to all these policies and brings a different dimension to the issue of social policies, but also to start recognizing the importance of social policy. I always say, if we have macroeconomic policies, it's time that we also have macro-social policies in our countries. And so that was really where the social policy framework came from. There was reference of the SPIRE work, where we recognize that even though we are talking about, decent work, and we talk about, employment opportunities and social security, on the continent, the majority of our people are still in the informal sector. And they are usually the most vulnerable and marginalized. And the idea of SPIRE work, therefore, that we developed at the African Union was to reach out to workers in the informal economy and to really see how social protection can also be extended to them. And I understand that it has been domesticated in Zambia. Congratulations, Zambia. You are doing quite well. I think it's the Livingston Call. It is the Livingston Call, definitely. We have got instruments. We have currently, if I say we, I'm talking as an African now. I know the UN has, but I'm really referring to the African Union. And currently, as we are sitting, there is a draft protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, on the rights of citizens to social protection. In fact, I'm just coming from others where I had a brief discussion with the chairperson of the Commission on Human and People's Rights, and that they are saying all that is now left is for these instruments to follow the adoption of the AU organs. Then we also have a social protection or social policy architecture based on Agenda 2063. And I think it is important that we look at that, because it is really about social policy interventions by the state in collaborative working relations with society to correct the skewed economic development paradigm of the past, which produced non-inclusive growth, and it would clearly protect the vulnerable underbelly of society, which is the working class, children, and their families. They will ensure that social development is not left to the invisible hand of the market, but instead these instruments will concretize appropriate conditions for creating livelihoods and consequent human security for citizens. Thirdly, it is clear that although we have all this, there are all these policy instruments and legal instruments, at least we see tangible impacts and tangible outcomes. The earlier references to the transform. I am quite impressed to know that now we also have masters in social protection. It's just amazing that social protection is getting off on its own. It's no longer just an afterthought or just something that is what I always say, that we think we are doing favors to those that are vulnerable and marginalized. But I think those days are over. I think we are now talking about the right of people to live dignified lives. This year we will have the high-level political forum on sustainable development, and we know that countries have to report on what they have been doing in terms of the implementation of the SDGs, and specifically also with reference to social policy and social protection issues. But I am also coming from a country, and I think it is only fair that I talk about Namibia because I'm very familiar with Namibia. And that is that, yes, it's a country that has got one of the best social protection systems. It has got a universal old age, pension, which means everyone in Namibia, irrespective of your status in society, once you turn 60, you are entitled to a state pension. The children's grants are still means tested, but at this point in time, we are pushing for it also to be universal, irrespective of the status of children. We have got grants for disability. We have got grants for old age, but also other complementary assistance, the food bank, for example. But what we should never forget is that social protection policies must be read and dealt with in conjunction with access to basic services. I always feel that if, for example, in Namibia, we did not have the old age pension, I wonder what would have happened to the emergence of an increased orphans as a result of AIDS. It was those pensions that ensured the survival of families, of children, and of communities. So what we should ask ourselves when we are talking about social protection is there is always this issue that people raise that it creates dependency. And I am asking myself, yes, it creates dependency for those that get $10,000 a month. But it does not create dependency for a person that had nothing per month. And so we need to redefine and refocus our discourses when we are dealing with social protection issues. And I do believe that it is social protection, that grants that people were getting, that has allowed them to move on to at least access the services that they would otherwise not have been able to access. So I am very glad to see that from the time that we started, and it was just discussions and debates, that we have actually moved into practical implementation of many of those policies. We have experimented the basic income grant in Namibia, and as I said here, government is seriously considering implementing the basic income grant in Namibia. It has been proven beyond reasonable doubt that the impact of that project that was started was phenomenal. And that all those arguments that people advance, that if you give people cash, they are going to drink, they are going to abuse it on alcohol, has really been dispelled. That people use whatever money they get for those basic necessities that you and I might be taken for granted. So just in conclusion, I just want to once again say it is very important that when we are talking about an issue such as social protection, and also for the UN, that it is indeed the promotion of cornerstones for social and economic development, in which my office has been very instrumental. These are the nexus between peace, security, and development, to be buttressed by good governance, respect for human rights, and the rule of law on the African continent. In the process, we came to appreciate that social cohesion among people in the different strata is critical for poverty eradication, reducing vulnerability, and addressing inequality. Key to the social cohesion is the promotion of Pan-African values of solidarity, self-reliance, hard work, and collective prosperity. I personally wish that the social protection outcomes towards the eradication of poverty and inequality, for which we are gathered here, will strongly propel education, early childhood development, healthcare, food security, good nutrition, decent work, and the multiplier effect of cash transfers in local communities as the big equalizers. Finally, I'm confident that excellent discussions we are having at the meetings and the side meetings at this session of the UN Commission for Social Development and today's event will bring new insights to this important debate on ways and means of strengthening social protection systems in African countries, and to finally say that it is through social protection that we will ensure that no one is left behind. And it is through social protection systems that I want to believe that we will get to the Africa we want. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Undersecretary General Biens, a friend also. And you cannot imagine how relevant your words are for the currently ongoing discussions and negotiations about the future of this Commission on Social Development, and the priority themes for next year. Actually, you were using some language that is on the table as we speak in the informal negotiations on integrating social protection for all and access to basic services of education, health, and others. And thank you also so much for wonderfully mastering to react to what you had heard today and seen, and to what I know you had prepared for this. It was a wonderful combination of that. We'd be quite interested in hearing reactions to this, and I would invite Director Daniela Baas to come first, and we can have, or would you like to come last after?
No, it's fine.
And then there's possibility for other reactions from the floor. Let me also share with you that this event is being live streamed, so there are people outside this room, anywhere in the world, listening to this and watching this, and the live streaming is recorded. So you and your colleagues can also go back to these statements, this discussion. It's going to be available on the socialprotection.org website, which is the common portal of global actors on social protection. You're always welcome also to contact us and to UNDESA to get access to those materials. And also the presentations and the statement by Undersecretary General Gawanas are also going to be available on that website. So let's hope we use these important ideas wisely for the future. Director Daniela Baas is one of the fighters, as we all are, for a better world, and we have also worked for long. She's leading the preparations and the management of Commission on Social Development on behalf of the UN Secretariat, a real visionary person. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Boipo, Your Excellencies and colleagues. It's a pleasure to just say a few remarks, Boipo, if you allow, because I think that it's more interesting for the audience actually to interact with the experts. I would like just to say that when we talk about inequalities and social protection policies, and there I see Europe and I see Africa, and what comes to my mind is the fourth industrial revolution that we are living in, where technology and science and math and engineering are actually playing a major role. And so if Europe, that is kind of already well off when it comes to technologies, and yet is facing a huge dilemma now, the kind of social protection floors that we created throughout 150 years while the Industrial Revolution, the third one, was taking place, are they responding to the needs of people in the fourth industrial revolution? Not really. So I really think that we should review and rethink social protection floors in the fourth industrial revolution, while we're talking, still making reference to the third one. I don't think that what we created during those 150 to 100 years is applicable now. It's like treating a new sickness with an old medicine. And then I read Africa and I wonder, I believe that the African continent is still based much on agriculture, even though there are industries, etc. So hasn't reached yet probably what we call the third industrial or fourth industrial revolution in Europe, with some exceptions, of course. And so I'm wondering, what kind of social protection policies are we talking about here, if they have to be universal? Or do we need to target them depending on the region and the sub-region? And so what kind of discourse we should really be discussing about today, and not only today? So this is a question I want to pose. If we really want to be able to implement the SDGs that are universal and countries have to be accountable, what kind of policies and solutions are we bringing to the table, and are they applicable universally to all, in order to make sure that not only people but countries are not left behind? So I come here more than with conclusions, with questions. And this belongs also maybe to the fact that as a background, I'm also a certified journalist, and I love asking questions to myself as well. So overall, definitely when we talk about social protection systems, they have to be designed, in my view, and implemented based on the principle of equity, not equality. Mm-hmm. Equal is you give them, okay, the same chair with the same height to people with the different heights, but the desk has the same height for everybody. So you give the same desk with the same height and the same chair with the same height. But then a person who's tall 6 feet, or one who is tall 3 feet, or the other one, actually won't reach the desk in an equal manner. But equity, it means that depending on the height of a person, you change the height of the chair. So it doesn't matter the height of the desk. Everybody will, in that case, equally, through equity, have the same level and sit at the same level. So I believe that we should also take this into consideration. And I loved very much, for instance, what the minister from Finland said when it comes about some policies that are implemented vis-a-vis persons with disabilities. It's not a bunch of people, but they are targeted depending on the kind of disability. We talk about disability, we talk about Europe, we talk about Africa, we talk about youth or aging, as if once you give this definition, the needs are the same. Not really. People are different. So even when we think about our reducing inequalities, we have to think about the differences within the various, the same group. And so what's needed in order to reduce social protection, to reduce inequality and have worth and meaningful social protection policies in both regions of the world. Thank you. What can we do? What can we do? Thank you.
Thank you so much. So that kind of, to summarize, maybe the question was, how do we provide social protection for all these diverse people of the world, earning their livelihoods from different sources, being in different life cycle situations, from young to old, and in different countries. We all have the right, but how do we tailor? The SPIRE work of the African Union and the Zambian efforts is beautiful in the sense that you try to tailor the contributory social protection for the farmers so that they can contribute during the harvest season. When they have money for the marketeers, they have to contribute every day a very small amount by mobile money, because if they don't contribute today, the money is gone tomorrow. And then you have the domestic workers, you have the sawmill workers, you have the taxi drivers, various groups, and they all have different income patterns. The law says that everyone should contribute once a month, otherwise you get penalties. But now what Zambia is experimenting as a kind of a leader and flagship for the whole continent is how to tailor that. We always want people to contribute if they can. The government has an obligation to provide social assistance for those who cannot contribute at all, but it's always going to be better if we can find ways to help people to contribute reasonable amounts, and governments can maybe subsidize the contributions then for those who cannot contribute enough. Now let's open the floor for discussion, questions. There's the first question here. Please introduce yourself and...
Sorry. Good day, everybody. My name is Emmanuel Adebayor. I'm from World Wide Network, Nigeria. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Timo, because unfortunately I happen to be a pioneer of the social protection masters in Germany, sponsored by the EU. We started in 2015, and I also happen to be a pioneer of social protection, one of the social protection ambassadors on the platform of socialprotection.org, in which Transform currently operates. I would like to ask basically two questions and more like a contribution. So first of all, to Mr. Stanfield, I personally have asked questions about when people are trained to have masters in social protection like myself. They've not been a lot done to integrate them back, to do something back on the African continent. And I also understand that Transform quarterly takes about 22 people at a time right now. So, and you also talk about the fact that you are also doing a master's program right there in Africa. But what has been done actually to make sure that these experts actually, they do not waste their expertise in other areas? Because I personally have other colleagues that have masters in social protection, and some of them are doing something else because these people are no longer, nobody's using their expertise that they've learned. My second question will be in the area of what you are currently doing in Zambia. I personally have been a critic of so many programs that have been done in Africa because it's mainly focused on cash transfer, social assistance programs without social security programs. That's because most of these programs are usually targeted, and as it's been said, social protection is not only to lift people out of poverty, but also a mechanism to stop people from entering into poverty. So we focus mainly, now it's beginning to look like our programs are more of aid program rather than social protection program. So how do you intend to also encourage the government to focus on social insurance program, which seems more sustainable for everybody? Thank you.
Thank you. Let's have another question or comment from that end.
And thank you very much for this session. My question is for Ms. Daniela Bass and also for Ms. Gowanas. Can I ask both of you, and I give you the example of the UK and how you can protect in the future. I am one of the many people in the UK who paid into a pension scheme only for them to move the age when you benefited from 60 to 62 and then from 62 to 66. And it was gender equality because it was only women that affected it. So when we entered into the pension schemes, and they were all set up, we had no choice because it was taken from source. It was taken from your wages. So it wasn't voluntary, it was compulsory. So it's all very good setting up these schemes, but further down the line, you end up putting people in poverty when they should have been claiming the pensions.
Give time for responses now. We have 4 minutes time, official time. So let's start with Stanfield. Michelle, you had a question.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question from Nigeria. Yes, it would appear to say in the past the focus has been on cash transfers in most of the countries in Africa, but there is now a realization to say social protection actually is supposed to be a package. You look at the different pillars, and the different pillars are supposed basically to talk to one another. Social assistance must be directly linked, for instance, to contributory pensions. So talking about Zambia, we are looking at 4 pillars: the social assistance, the empowerment, the protection, and also the contributory pensions. And we have already drafted a bill that brings together the different components of social protections so that we are able to create these linkages. Then in terms of learning, yes, you are very right to say the numbers of people that have speciality in social protections are very low. So this is the reason why we need to domesticate the training even further for social protection so that we can have numbers. Because once you only have 1 individual or 2 individuals in an organization that you have the training in social protection, they tend to be overwhelmed by those perhaps that don't have the speciality in social protection. So what are we supposed to do? So that remains a challenge, and we think that domestication of social protection in a systematic manner, I think, will be able to offer us the results that we envisage. Remember, this is a journey. It might not be done in 1 year or 2 years. Remember, Her Excellency mentioned about the Livingston Cove action. That was in 2005. And this is now that we are beginning to basically get the outcome of that meeting we had in 2005. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And, Undersecretary General, would you like to go next?
Thank you very much. You know, if you look at the national planning commissions in our countries, they are populated by economists. I don't have a problem with economists. But that brings about a very biased policies in our countries. And therefore, I think there must be an insistence that we incorporate within the civil servants, especially those that are heading ministries and commissions that ultimately impacts on the policies and plans that will be adopted by government. At the AU itself, during our time, we actually had training done at, is it Sunrest? To take people that work in national planning commissions and put them through training on social policy so that at least they are sensitive in terms of, what should be developed. So I think it is important that when we do give people training, that we ensure that they are actually the pallbearers or whatever it is for these policies within governments. I fully agree with you. I am one of those that don't necessarily believe that social protection is all about cash transfers. I think in Africa or anywhere else, we need to be very clear that it is not cash transfers that will take people out of poverty. That's why I was saying it always has to be looked at in the context of other complementarities that exist. Cash transfers being one of those. Social security, definitely it's out there, but again, it is very limited because it's only for those that are actually in full-time employment. It does not cater for those that are not full-time employed. And so how do we extend social security to your domestic workers, to your farm workers, to the agricultural workers, many of them that are not within the ambit of your labor laws, or for that matter, your social, social security. I really cannot comment on what my sister from the UK raised. It's a catch-22 situation. We don't want to retire anymore at age 60. Am I right? We want to be around for as long as we can, bodily, contribute. But then, when you look at it the other way around, if you want to leave earlier, you can't, because that means that you will have a reduction of your pension because it's taken as early retirement. But that really depends on the country, pension laws.
Thank you so much. I guess Director Daniela Bass, who is our host and our gives us the rules of the game here, and we have been allocated this slot in time because there will be other events. So if you agree that we close, I encourage you to go back to the presentations, go back to the live streamed, the recorded live stream. There are also the links to those statements, video statements by African social protection experts. Really encouraging, really interesting, exciting, in my opinion. Thank you all. We had extremely important questions here. We had quite a few interesting innovations also that are trying to find answers and solutions to some of those questions. It's a long road, but I think it's encouraging what we have accomplished in Africa, and the world should know that Africa has a lot to share for the rest of the world. There's a lot happening in Africa in this sector. Thank you.